museum makes a wonderful place to visit during the dark days of winter. It's a fantastic cultural resource right here in Rochester. And here to talk to us about it is the Senior Director for Marketing and Engagement, Eliza Kozlowski. Welcome, Eliza. Thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, great to see you, Eric. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, it's just a fantastic time to visit the Eastman Museum while everything is in bloom.
Exactly, right? February, it's in bloom. But we're in, what, 27 years now of continuing a tradition that George Eastman had, which was forcing bulbs all winter long in his historic mansion. And so we have thousands of bulbs that will be blooming for 3 weeks in mainly in the conservatory of the mansion. And this continues what George Eastman loved. He had been on a bike trip in Holland and discovered the tulips and decided he wanted to have them in his own home. And we order from the same place that he ordered his bulbs. So it's wonderful because it's just what Rochester needs in February, a little dose of spring.
And so what kind of flowers are these? It's tulips and others?
Tulips and daffodils and actually small azaleas and amaryllis and really just multiple varieties of those as well. And we loosely base each year's order on George Eastman's order from 100 years ago. So he would have changed things up where sometimes he changed his color palette a little bit. And so we try to continue that as well.
Isn't that fantastic? So that's one reason to visit the museum, but then there are rotating displays and exhibits that are very interesting, especially this month and beyond.
Absolutely. And anytime you visit, there's something new to see in our galleries. Right now and through June, we have work by it's actually an early career retrospective by an artist named Joshua Rashad McFadden. He's a professor at RIT. He's also on assignment frequently with the New York Times and National Geographic. And we're thrilled to be able to present an extremely powerful exhibition that looks at, he is Black, he is gay, and his work looks at issues of race, of gender, of identity. Something extremely timely is that he has been on assignment for the New York Times really during these very difficult and challenging and sad times in Minneapolis, in Louisville, here right in Rochester, documenting the protests and the demonstrations. So some of that work's on display, some very personal work of his in new work where he's turned the camera on his own family and has assembled photos from his family's archive and really showing the importance, something that's talked about quite a bit now in the Black community, of the importance of keeping these photos, of sharing photos, showing really the history within the Black community. And so it's very thought-provoking. It's very emotional as an exhibition. And as I said, it's on display through June. But we're very pleased to have it here in Rochester and to have worked very closely with Joshua Rashad to present this exhibition.
Oh, that's phenomenal. And there was an interesting Aboriginal photographer from Australia also on display right now.
Exactly, yes. Artist James Tyler, who looks at the indigenous landscapes in Australia, and he actually reframes them. So he does both black and white photos and also contemporary daguerreotypes, which is really the earliest process in photography. And he shows these spaces of how they would look had there not been colonization. And something interesting about the way it's installed, the exhibition is installed, he's also a woodworker, and he's created these tools that represent colonization in Australia. And so he has those like pickaxes and saws and spears that are on display as part of this installation. So again, very thought-provoking, an opportunity for us as we think about who occupied the land that we live on now in an area that was really the Seneca Nation. So it's very timely for conversations that are happening now concerning our own land.
Right, and the museum is named for George Eastman, and it's in fact repurposed his historical mansion. Isn't that correct?
Well, yeah, so I like to think of us as two museums in one, in that we have not only the National Historic Landmark and Mansion of George Eastman and the gardens as well, that are currently under a blanket of snow, but will bloom again. And then the galleries, where we're able to, certainly George Eastman was a pioneer in photography, but also in moving images. And so our exhibitions of photographs, of cameras, and also films that we exhibit in the Dryden Theater. But then the mansion itself has been restored to look as it did when Eastman lived there between 1905 and 1932. And it's at the moment, we're not able to offer guided tours because we're being very cautious during the pandemic, but we have a mobile tour where visitors can go from room to room and hear about how George Eastman would have used those rooms, putting a little bit more context of George Eastman. But also, really, I would say the most exciting thing that's happened in the last 2 years, and it's hard to believe that it's been over a year since it opened, but we have a brand new entrance, a new visitor center. It's the Thomas Tisher Visitor Center, and we opened it during the pandemic, and it's a whole new way to enter the museum. It's much more accessible, much more welcoming, includes a central entrance to the museum with a new multi-purpose hall where we can screen art films, as well as a new shop. And we're very excited because Open Face, which is an eatery that was previously in the South Wedge and had closed a number of years ago, is now reopened in the museum for lunch, and it includes beautiful area where there's views of the garden for seating. So we're really thrilled to have Open Face here at the museum.
That's fantastic to have all those resources for when the weather starts to turn and gets nice outside again.
Absolutely, yes. And in fact, there's so much that's been happening that's exciting about the work that's done at the museum. Some things in the mansion that are less glamorous but really needed to be done, which is things like fixing windows and dormers, and that's a very important project. But we also received funding to restore the various garden structures. So those that are original to George Eastman, wood that had been rotting or cracking. So the terrace garden right now, the pergola, which is the main part of the terrace garden that blooms beautifully with wisteria in the spring, is undercover as that's being restored. And all of the beds of the garden had to be pulled out in order to accommodate construction on the windows, but also on our colonnade, which is the area that connects the newer portion of the museum to the house, and is now a beautiful continuous glass window out onto the gardens. So in the spring, we will be replanting those gardens, so it'll look similar to as it looked when Eastman first planted them back in the early 1900s. But it's great that we're able to get the funding to get all of this work done.
And to have the plans that you can reconstruct those gardens from.
Yeah, we're very fortunate that we have Alling DeForest's original planting plans. So we know, in many cases, we know just what went where, and we also know some of the varieties. It's very hard to get some of those exact varieties, but we do our best to have it look just as it did during Eastman's time. And what I love is that it was planned so that it had the longest bloom life, so that the earliest in spring with some of the earliest bulbs, such as daffodils, but then late into the fall with some beautiful ornamental grass. So there's always something changing and in bloom in the gardens.
And then Claude Bragdon, the famous architect, designed part of that garden too.
Yeah, we have our West Garden, or our sunken garden, that was designed by Claude Bragdon, well-known Rochester architect. And what's exciting as part of all these projects too, we're trying to make the gardens more accessible. So in areas where there's stairs, we're working to redo the brick walkway so you can access some of these structures. And it's not under construction yet, but the Claude Bragdon garden you're referring to is going to have a ramp that will allow visitors that need assisted access to be able to enter that garden. So we're really thrilled that will be coming in the next couple of years.
And that's phenomenal. So George Eastman was quite the guy, such a wide-ranging and thorough imagination about how things needed to be and how to look. Can you learn more about his life too at the museum?
Absolutely. Right now we have just actually opening right around the time of Dutch Connection every year. We have an exhibit that's about George Eastman 100 years ago. So we have an exhibit that's all year long, that's on the second floor of the mansion, that looks at what was Eastman doing 100 years ago. So this year, we're looking at 1922. And interestingly, George Eastman thought that he was going to pass away during the Spanish flu. So as we've been talking about 100 years ago, the world was dealing with influenza, or the Spanish flu. Eastman thought that he might succumb to that. And when he didn't, it gave him renewed energy, and he had his most productive decade following that. So we're looking at the 100th anniversary of so many organizations. Last year, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of Eastman Savings and Loan, this year of Eastman Theater, Eastman School of Music. So that exhibition is a great opportunity to see what really was Eastman doing at this time 100 years ago.
A very formative era in Rochester history.
Yeah. And then we've also just announced, and we've received some funding and are continuing to fundraise for it. There's going to be an area of the museum that doesn't have any historic interiors right now, and it's behind the scenes area for staff that we're turning into Eastman galleries. So this will be something that we hope to be able to open around our 75th anniversary in 2024. But instead of walking right into George Eastman's dining room, you'll walk into a series of galleries that will talk about George Eastman, provide a little bit more context, and then you'll come into the massive, very impressive conservatory, which is how most of his visitors would have entered the mansion for the first time.
Oh, my, oh, my. Well, and if it's not possible for people to visit right now, they can still enjoy the museum remotely. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. Something we've introduced recently are virtual tours, and we have 360 virtual tours that people can access on our website, eastman.org, of the mansion, of the gardens, but also for every exhibition that we do. So it's a chance if you want to look ahead of time, if you as a pre-visit, or want to spend a bit more time after, or if you're not able to visit, whether at this time you don't feel comfortable yet, or if you're restricted and just not able to get out, or if you're not from Rochester, people can gain access. And we also have many opportunities to view various videos that give you more insights into the collection and into the work that we do here that are accessible through our website and through our YouTube channel, and wonderful activities that families can do, how they can do some early animation, making phenakistoscopes and thaumatropes. And so we have videos that show how to do it and instruction sheets as well. So a really myriad of opportunities to connect online.
Fantastic. And I know that people from all over the world visit the Eastman Museum to research film and the history of film and photography here in Rochester.
Yes, so we have, right now, some access is limited because of the pandemic, but we hope to open up soon and are very welcoming of researchers who would like to come and make an appointment in one of the collections. So within the photography collection, the technology collection, the moving image collection, or our library. And our library is really a phenomenal library on the history of photography and cinema. And we also have collections online. So we have hundreds of thousands of our collections that have been digitized. And right from our website, people can search the collection, and no matter the subject matter, they'll find something. So it's even fun for just the general enthusiast to do as well.
That's fantastic. So what is the website where we can find all these resources and virtual tours?
Yep, so it's eastman.org, very simple.
Okay, and so if people are interested in becoming members of the museum, can they do that as well?
Absolutely. So we have membership at many levels that does provide you tremendous access on site, but we also during the pandemic introduced a virtual membership. So again, if people aren't able to make it for any number of reasons, they can join as a virtual member and have access to exclusive content. And then just in general, we are very incredibly appreciative of the support that we get, not only from the Rochester community, but worldwide, to help with many of the projects that I've talked about and other projects that we have. And so there's also an opportunity through our website just to provide a donation towards the museum's efforts. And we really appreciate that too. We wouldn't be able to do everything we do without our extremely supportive and loyal members and our donors.
Well, it's been wonderful to talk about the Eastman Museum today. It's a great resource for Rochester and the world, and wonderful to visit online or in person. My guest
Great, Eric, thank you.
Thank you so much for talking about it. It's wonderful. My guest has been Eliza Kozlowski. She's the Senior Director of Marketing Engagement for the Eastman Museum here in Rochester, New York. In the Spotlight is a production of Penfield Television with sponsorship from Nocon & Associates, a private wealth advisory practice of Ameriprise Financial Advisors. If you enjoy this program, please find us on Facebook, like and share the program, and find our full playlist on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.